the Canon 200mm f2 LIS USM. There's not a lot of videos about this lens on YouTube, so I thought I'd chime in and give you all my thoughts. I think Manioc Tees and DP Review actually has a couple of reviews up on this lens, but I'm gonna give you my take and maybe go a bit more into detail, especially regarding the autofocus performance on the Sony a7R Mark IV, a 61 megapixel camera. And specifically, I'm going to use the Sigma MC11 adapter with the latest firmware, the early 2021 firmware. And as far as I know, then the Sigma adapter is the best adapter. It beats out the Metabones and other brands that are available for the Sony E-mount system. So if you want to adapt Canon EF lenses onto your full frame Sony camera, then I think the MC11 is the way to go. In general, I can say that the eye autofocus works perfectly. And the tracking works really great as well. But whenever there's fast movement involved in the scene, then the autofocus motors simply can't keep up. And I'm gonna show you a clip here with my daughter running towards the camera, and the USM motors from 2008 are simply not fast enough. They're not nearly as fast as modern day USM motors or Sony's linear motors. But for anything general use, the autofocus keeps up very well, and I have not had any issues whatsoever. So as long as you're not doing anything sports related, then this should be fine. You can even have someone run away from you or from side to side in the frame, and it will keep up just fine. And the tracking works as if it was a native lens. There's not much autofocus sound either, and it's really quick to autofocus as well. So again, for anything general purpose, then this lens is working really fine. Now there is one little caveat, or however you call it in English, because you can't have autofocus enabled in movies, so you're limited to manual focus only when recording in movies on your A7 series cameras. Also, the minimum focus distance is 1.9 meters, which is not very impressive, and it's about equal to a 0.12 times magnification. That's not enough for anything macro at all. But it's enough for getting tight headshots, and that's probably the closest you're gonna get, and the closest you're ever gonna need to get with this lens, to be honest. But for comparison, then the 70-200 GM lens has a 0.25 times magnification, and that means it can focus down to 0.96 meters. And again, when it comes to the aperture, then the f2 versus f2.8 is not really that much, at least not when it comes to background blur or subject separation from the background. When you're taking tight headshots, then you really can't notice it compared to a 2.8. But when you're taking full body shots, then you can actually see it, at least in side-by-side comparisons. I doubt anyone in a blind test could ever tell if it was shot at 2.0 or at 2.8. Sharpness is really good. I really like it. It's not something insanely amazing, but it's really good for a 13-year-old lens, to be honest. It was released in 2008, and it has IBIS, image stabilization. So it's like comparable to the current 70-200 G Master lens from Sony, and also the 85 1.4 GM lens from Sony. And if you go into Sony Alpha blog and have a look at the sharpest lenses, then this is not nearly up there with any modern lenses like the 135 GM or the 24 GM or anything like that. But it gets the job done, and again, I don't think any client will ever notice that it's not super tech sharp. But if you are using it on a 61 megapixel body, then just know you're not taking full advantage of your sensor, but you will still get really, really great results. The colors, they are warmer than modern RF glass is, and I think they look really, really nice. They look nicer than a lot of the Sony glass out there, and I don't think anyone will disagree with that. Of course, you can always tweak the colors in post when you're shooting RAW, so don't worry too much about it. Also, I haven't really noticed any serious flaring or chromatic aberrations, so I'm not really gonna dive into that because to me it's a non-issue. The image stabilization is it's quite good. It's not anything like comparable to modern stabilized lenses, but considering this is from 2008 and it has some huge elements, then it's actually quite good and it's really, really usable. So that's a definite advantage over the 200mm f1.8 that Canon also has released previously. When it comes to optional accessories, then I've bought the Polar Pro Defender 114mm cap. It fits perfectly and doesn't fall off. It's really snug on the front of the lens. So if you're getting this lens, then I would definitely recommend getting the Polar Pro Defender lens cap, because there is no other lens cap except for some huge ass leather pouch thing that just makes zero sense. So in conclusion, then, how good is this lens compared to a 70-200, a modern 70-200? Then I can say that it gives you one extra stop of light, so that can be the difference between an ISO of 12,800 and 6,400, so that's quite good. Do you really need it on modern cameras that has very good ISO performance? I don't know, but that must be up to you. There's not significantly more background separation than an f2.8 lens, so I wouldn't get it just for that. The autofocus is fast, but it's not bleeding edge fast like modern USM motors or Sony's extreme linear motors. It's not as versatile as a zoom lens, so that's something to consider as well. And it's only equally sharp to modern 70-200mm lenses. I'm not really sure how sharp Canon's new RF 70-200 is, but I'm just comparing this to the Sony GM lens that is like 3 to 4 years old now, I think. So if you buy this, then it should definitely be for your own personal gratification, knowing that you have something truly amazing. It's really great, and I'm not gonna get rid of mine. I really, really like the images that comes out of it, but you should definitely not get it if it's for your clients or for the end product, because there's not much of a difference compared to a zoom lens, to be honest. But knowing that you have something that is part of history and something that's quite spectacular, that's quite important as well. And so have a good one. This is it, and take care.